Sure. So we'd like to welcome you to the Mount Horeb Area School District. My name is Micah Heiler, and
I'm Nick Dressler.
So we'll be asking the questions this evening. So we chose the order that candidates answer the question with a pick of numbers. Each member will get 3 minutes to answer each question. When the time is up, there will be a signal.
Do you want me to keep track of that?
Sure. Thank you.
Just like a board meeting. But you'll have us. Bonus.
So we can begin with the first question. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the school district, and how do you plan on addressing/resolving these? I think we can probably just go with whoever wants to answer that, or if we want to do it in a row. It doesn't matter.
Go ahead, Leah, and then we'll
Sure.
rotate.
So really, I think the biggest challenge we're going to face this upcoming year is going to be all the changes to the federal government, the federal funding. We only get, I say only, we get about $1 million in federal funding, but we don't know what the changes to Department of Ed are going to do. As far as addressing and resolving them, till they come, we're going to just have to pivot and take them as they are. I think lunch is probably going to be our biggest hurdle, because that's the federal money, that's what we use a lot of that money for. And I don't know what we're at for free and reduced lunch population, but we were at somewhere between 11 and 15%, I think. So it is going to affect a good chunk of our population. But yeah, until they come, we can't really address or resolve them, unfortunately. But I think that's going to be our biggest issue this year.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would continue on that funding path, just from what we were hearing the other day about the state budget situation. The timing, as much as anything else, about how we're going to be a little bit in the dark. That process, you never know how long it could go, but we're hearing it could extend even out into the fall. And obviously, we're making budget considerations before then, trying to build that into our plans. So we're operating a little bit with a little bit of uncertainty, especially because there have been asks of the legislature to boost the amount of funding, both per pupil and then for special education. And that money all goes into the same pot essentially, and lets us do more things with it. And one of the biggest, obviously, is staff compensation. As we talk about a lot, more than 80% of the budget is for the people who work here, and that's the beauty of the school. So we want to make sure that we're providing competitive compensation for them and rewarding them for all the good work that they do.
And in a similar vein, what I put down as the thing I think is the biggest challenge coming our way, or that we're in the middle of right now, is declining enrollment. And it's something that is impacting schools across the state of Wisconsin. That has to do with just the change in population, the change in birth rates. And the challenge there is that our funding is directly tied to how many students are enrolled in school. And so you can reduce your student population by 20 students and lose a significant amount of money, but that doesn't mean that you can sell a school bus or close a classroom or anything like that. And so we're not alone in that by any means, but it is just a challenge that goes along with how we navigate that instability of funding that's in the future. I think some of the ways we have tried to tackle that are making sure that we're keeping good partnerships with the village to do things to talk about increasing housing, affordable housing, making sure that Mount Horeb is a community families want to move to. That also, we play a big role in that too, right? Making sure that our schools are welcoming, exciting schools that families want to come and be a part of. And so, you know, there are advocacy things we can do to make sure that our funding formulas are more fair and that they change. But we also can design programs that will increase our enrollment on the flip side.
And kind of on what some of you guys were saying with like being like in the dark from where it is not knowing quite yet, do you think that, what's your take on if the dealing with whatever those problems are that are
that do arise from different changes in the budget, if those are affected by past choosing of spending, not just partially on like having maybe higher populations of students, or compared to different things such as, oh, we put our money here because we had more, and now that possible future budget cuts, if that puts us in a worse position to kind of handle those, or how those affect each other if they do or don't.
Yes, so like 80% of our budget is staff. So 80% of the budget we have goes to staffing. So we are also very conservative. We are lucky, so lucky to have Scott Dion as our business, I don't even know his title, assistant superintendent and business guru. We budget very conservatively so that we don't run into those problems. Like, we don't ever want to have to cut staff or anything like that. So I don't think.
So more so past spending, you say, is put it in a good position?
Yeah, we have a very good fund balance, which isn't a savings account, but it is something we can tap into if we absolutely have to. We've done it in years past, so I think we've done a pretty good job at being fiscally responsible.
Yeah, I would second that. And you think about some of the investments that we're making are really long-term investments. Again, you can't cut your way to success. That is what it boils down to. And thinking about the capital referendum that the citizens voted for, which is just awesome. We just had a meeting today talking about how that new kindergarten addition will go on to the PC, and that's going to be a really nice shiny object that is going to, you'll be able to talk to parents of young kids. Maybe they're in Madison, they're looking for a smaller town to move to and set up shop, and you can say, look at what we can deliver for you. So I really like where we've spent the money that way, and just grateful to the community for that, and obviously the $4.8 million recurring operating referendum. Without that, we would be making some brutally tough choices right now. So just want to always highlight that they put their money and their faith in the school system, and we have that on our minds all the time to make sure that we're spending that wisely.
Absolutely. To Adam's point also on investments and how we've spent some of that money, we are also mindful to do that in ways that increase not only student well-being and our programs, but our funding sources as well, right? We have a resource development coordinator who I just learned today that she's been able to help us write grants over the year that have totaled up to a little over almost $1.5 million in income. So that is an investment made that is paying dividends.
And would you say with some of the different things that we have spent money on, I noticed you were talking about, like, especially like resources and sources for well-being and other sort of things to address for the students and staff as well, of if those resources and sources, if you guys see those as being in a good position or in a position of wanting to change the way that those are accessible or accessed to the staff or student body.
We go through every year, we work with the administration on a budget process around this time of year. It kind of goes from January to April, where we take a look at how the budget's being spent. And we do talk about specific areas that we feel that maybe need addressing through that process. I can't think that there's anything at this point that I would recommend that we change from the path that we're on. But that is a recurring discussion.
Yeah, and we have had high-level discussions about this coming year, but we haven't gotten into the specifics yet on that. And that's there is a lot of nitty-gritty there about where $20,000 or whatnot gets moved around. And we always try, you never have enough money at the same time to address everything that you want to do. I think that's the thing that we struggle with a lot the most when you look at this budget. Yeah, so you try to look at like the most pressing needs, priority needs. I know that reached out to the Teachers Association, Education Association, and asked for some of their input, and made a real point of that this year. Get out in front of the budget cycle, saying what are you most concerned about? Where's some areas that we can work together on, so that it's not just us coming up with the solution. We're basing it off of the folks who are in the buildings all the time and see how the operation works.
I don't really have anything else to add based on what you guys have said.
Yeah, even, I would say, there's a lot of really good things to even branching off from the budget. What would be your guys' take on maybe some of those things, kind of like the doing what, when, having the money, but even kind of outside the budget and just different like ideals of like along with the mission of the different schools, and like the way that in the day-to-day different things are addressed or talked about, or such things of where those are at in like being like a good place open for change, or just kind of like what your take is on almost those changes or things that they're doing that are like outside of the budget, like the day-to-day, how are we addressing different problems that are occurring, different things that are like socially just high raising, or like notice taking, things that are like, in the news a lot or not in the news a lot, and just those different ideas of like well-being, mental health, and those sort of things, and how, if those are being addressed adequately or inadequately, or like changes or like continuities for those types of things.
Yeah, so like Carly and I just came from we have a safety review task force. And so it's one of those things where we got to figure out, we've come up with this huge list of priorities, and we've categorized them, and we've prioritized them, and we've moved them around, and now we're to the point where we got to figure out, okay, what's it going to cost to do? Can we write grants? And that's outside of our current budget, so we're going to have to figure out how to do that. But as far as getting into the day-to-day, we try to stay out of the day-to-day. That's where the principals, the teachers, they're setting your guys' day-to-day. Now, we are going to write policy that, helps navigate where those go, but ultimately we try to stay out of the day-to-day because we're not the experts there. But we're really good at writing policies. It's my favorite thing to do.
And the one area where it's not a policy, but I'm thinking about like our power goals for the board and well-being is one of those. It ties in with safety and psychological safety and comfort for students when you're at school, and we've placed an emphasis on that. It's already part of our strategic plan, but set that as one of our 3 priorities to make sure that kids, like the baseline question is, there an adult at school, one adult that you feel comfortable coming to if you have a real issue that you have to deal with. We want that to be the norm for everyone. We realize 100% is probably not possible, but we do. Exactly. We see the work that our faculty and support staff do every day to kind of bridge those gaps. I will say, speaking a little bit tangent, but maybe it gets to what you're talking about. We were at a program 2 nights ago. Dr. Salerno was there, and Jessica Aragoni from our school board as well, about called The Anxious Generation, and talking about the impact of social media and phones. We've taken steps to tighten up phone usage during the school day. There are a lot of parents there, and obviously it's a crowd that was attracted to this subject, so there's a little self-selection. But I think that the theme's pretty universal about how most parents are open to a lot tighter restrictions. And so I think that's something that we'll be discussing as a board, and just thinking about the impact of that on the learning environment, and then also on kids, more broader mental health and security.
I would just echo what both Adam and Leah said, and particularly on the power goals. Those are, to Leah's point, we don't set specific programs in the schools, but these particular 3 priorities we've given to the administration, and they're the ones that will figure out how to actually make them happen. And so Adam mentioned the belonging goal. That was one that I also felt very strongly about. The other 2 that are in there is a focus on academic growth in math and language arts, and the other one is a life readiness goal. Do you have enough volunteer opportunities? Do you have enough career preparation? Like how are we helping you get ready specifically for the next step out of school?
Within those like sections for like, I just noticed for like life readiness, would like behavioral of students play a role in this? And like school provides a lot of like kind of like boundaries for students, which I feel like boundaries for like kids in like their day and schedule, which can help like provide a lot of stability with them and help make them feel more secure. I'm just curious if the difference in, especially with how certain levels of our generation have dealt with experiencing certain years of schooling like virtual, so without as much the regular schedule that allows that kind of like structure that they can be in, if that plays a role in that behavioral and what that behavioral might play in life readiness, or is that more those skills of looking into careers, or if that plays a role? I'm just curious on your take on that.
You know, this question is actually tangential to some of the other questions that have been previously prepared for the evening by classmates. No, I appreciate that. I just apologize, I'm being a taskmaster. We have about 25 minutes and we have 6 questions remaining. We're only able to connect on that one. To this end, though, it's important that we answer your thoughtful questions. Any reflections at all on that piece?
Yeah, you know, I'll take it in this direction of behavioral from the beginning, that I feel like this school district has done a really good job starting at the youngest age of kids, thinking about themes of belonging. And we saw a lot of that at as early as the kindergarten level, first grade level, where you're getting kids together and you're having them discuss where they're at. I'll also point to as grades increase, that exposure to zones of regulation and how that's played out in different side settings inside the school, where kids are taught to recognize where they're at on their own behavioral path and be able to self-correct. I'm lucky enough to know the person who invented that as one of my college friends' wives, and I've talked to her a lot about that, and she couldn't be more pleased to see how that started as something that was a program for kids with developmental disabilities who maybe just hadn't had the opportunity to guide themselves, and it obviously has applications to everyone. So I've been really excited to see that. And I think you plant those seeds early to try to set the stage for later on, just in terms of how you're feeling emotionally. Obviously needs are different at every level and need to be tended to. And I know that everyone on this board, and especially frankly since like May 1st, that's been on our mind a lot about where people are, mental health and any trauma that they experienced that day, and helping them through it. And as you mentioned, thinking about COVID and pandemic and closures, how much time and money that this district has invested in specialized coaching for kids to try to get them back up to speed on anything they might have missed.
Thank you. So we're just going to try to move along. I think we have answered a couple of these questions indirectly, but so for a second one is like, how do you feel that the school board does communication with students, and do you think this can be improved? Does it need to be improved? And if so, how would it be improved?
I can start. The current avenues of communication we have a student representative on the board, on the full board. We also have student representatives around on several of our committees, and that's been super helpful to get their perspective directly on the topics that we're talking about, including the safety task force that Leah referenced earlier. And it's again been great to get their voices. I do think the other thing we do is each of us is a building liaison, and we try to work. I'm the liaison for the middle school, so I try to stay in touch with the middle school specifically and hear more about what they're doing. I will be the first to admit I could do a better job at that, and I do think, as I thought about this question, I personally would love to try and figure out how can I. It's one thing to visit the school and sit in the class, right, and see how the class goes, but that doesn't mean you're getting direct student student feedback. I'd love to go to student council meetings more frequently and hear what, have it be more of a conversation where appropriate. That's my initial take.
Good.
Yeah, and I would second your observation that I know that I could be doing a better job of getting into the schools, and that's one of my commitments here for the next 3 years of connecting on a more personal level more regularly. And then the other thing that strikes me is that I have a kid in college and I have a senior in high school, and I'm not as connected to the experiences of younger kids just based on my peer group and whatnot. So that's another area of concentration for me, is reaching out to some, especially younger parents. I mean, the second graders probably not going to tell me much, not knowing me, but be able to talk through them and their experiences and how they're feeling, because what my kids went through is now 10, 12 years old. It's different. Everything changes all the time. And it's really important to stay on top of the pulse of where things are at.
One of the things when I was president, I don't know, eons ago, we visited not only with the high school student council, but the IC student council, the middle school student council, and they were not afraid to tell us what they thought, which was fantastic. And I would love to get back to more of that. We actually got to go sit with the high school student council yesterday, and it was awesome. And they actually asked the similar question. And we talked about, we have student board members and all of that, but we also, if you ask us, we will come. If you have something cool going on in your classroom and you're like, hey, you guys want to come see this cool thing? I 100% will rearrange my schedule to come see the cool thing. Like, it's so much fun. But it's also something we need you to tell us, because I've been told by my children that you don't use Facebook, and that's how I do most of my communication. So like, we need to know from you, how do you want, and what do you want to hear from us? Right, because we have Dr. Shona puts together a great board recap. We could send it to you. Are you going to read it? Probably not, but we could send it to you if you want it. So we just need to know, like, how do you want to be communicated to and about what? And we could 100% improve it. Because I know even my own kids are like, I didn't know that. And I'm like, how do you not? You live in the same house as me, but they don't know. So.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how, like, for students, I think it's an interesting take for saying, like, how you need to hear that information, like, from the students, because I think it makes sense. I think so much of our generation is used to, like, instant communication and just being like, oh, we'll just, like, Snapchat them, or, like, just, like, that, whatever, and, like, for, like, whatever it is. And then I feel like then when, for example, like, receiving information, like, via, like, board summaries or, like, that sort of thing, is our generation is not always as good at being like, oh yes, I shall read this whole thing, or like, but there's not just like a headline, like.
You give it to you on Twitter, 240
characters.
Right.
And like with a short follow-up, how do we feel like we can get what you actually do as a roll out to students? Because I feel like not many kids know exactly what this board is, what they can do. They either think of them as powerless, or a weird bureaucratic step, or entirely omnipotent, in these kind of 3 different categories.
I like the omnipotent. I like that one.
So how could we think we could go about, I feel like students would definitely be more willing to ask and want to show things and get support and, yes, have their own self-advocation if they had a better understanding of what the role of the school board
even
was.
I think sometimes students can be like, oh, like, this day or whatever, they just are seeing, like, okay, well, this thing happened, and they're not seeing, like, necessarily the motives behind it. Of course, not every student is going to agree with everything, no matter what it is, but I think high schoolers can, and below 2, especially I think high schoolers, the area where they focus on those things, can have difficulty with accepting those without the judgment saying no, because it's not presented to them necessarily of, like, what your task is. So, Connie's question.
Yeah.
I think we need to get with Aubrey and have her get out the fancy Instagrams and do a story on who we are and what we do.
There you go.
And then somehow get it to the youths.
That's something really good. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah.
That's something that we can chew on.
I would say, just the next question we have on here, what do you feel have been your most important accomplishments in your time as a school board member, and what do you have planned to accomplish in the 2025-26 school year?
I mean, I have a long list, but I've been doing this forever.
Take it.
High priority ones.
So I've been on the board, this is my 12th year. So I've been on for a long time. And when I first started, we didn't have 4K. We now have 4K. That was one of my big things. We didn't have summer school. We kept being told we can't have summer school, can't have summer school. We have summer school. It's like trying to get band tickets. Like you're like, okay, ready, set, trying to get your kid into class. Like it's turned into this awesome thing. I was part of the group that hired Dr. Salerno. I think that's a great accomplishment. So like we've done a lot. I mean, there's been so much in the last 12 years. But for next year, I think our biggest focus is going to be getting the ELCPC situation launched off, and then bringing in the baccalaureate program. I mean, we're ready to go. I think that's going to be super exciting next year, and I can't wait to see where that goes.
Is that just being like employed next year, or is it already like grassroots within?
It starts next year. Yeah.
In the fall.
Yeah, it starts in the fall next year, where people can start signing up for it, and then I'm hoping it grows and becomes this big, awesome program that we have. So that's okay. I summed up my 12 years pretty quickly. And I feel less accomplished.
Leah did a lot more than that. She also got
Yeah.
board meetings shortened from 2 a.m. until
It's true.
about 9 at the most.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
thank
it's
you.
true. You're
Can I
welcome.
thank you for that?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
We used to read the minutes into the, like, someone would literally read all the minutes into the minutes. It was bananas.
We touched on a bunch of them that come to mind for me, the referendums that came through, a lot of our post-pandemic adaptation, trying to get people back up to speed. Fiscal prudence, curriculum evolution, IB was part of that. I think also all the growth of the youth apprenticeship programs and a lot of that readiness training, I think that is so huge. Going back to phonics-based reading at the youngest levels and getting kids up to speed on that. Things like introducing an American government course that'll be coming up as a requirement. I think that that's going to be well received by people. Believe it or not, like all across the political spectrum, there's something that we can agree on that's going to be good to have. And then for thinking ahead to next year, again, I think that the career readiness is just huge, and IB has a great program with that. If you go all in, it's a 2-year program to help you work on a lot of these soft skills to get you ready for life as much as the actual knowledge and a specific skill. And then the last thing I'll mention, hopefully I haven't gone through all of them, evidence-based grading that has been coming along slowly here and will be implemented over the next few years. That's going to be a really complicated process to get done and to get done correctly and to be able to explain that to the community. So I know that we're really tuned in on making sure that that's well thought out and well communicated.
I would agree with everything that's already been said. I put down the passage of both the operational referendum and the capital referendum for the PC in there. Those are big asks of the community, and we're very, very grateful for them, especially in a tough inflationary climate and a tough political climate as well. So there were a lot of people involved in the passage of both of those referendums, not just us, it's also the teachers, the community members. So I can't take credit for it, but I'm very proud of the work that everybody pulled together on those. Other than the things that have been said, the other thing I wrote down are we reestablished our strategic plan, or reaffirmed our strategic plan for the next several years, and we have just continued to do slow, steady, and consistent work on student belonging and inclusivity, and teacher work, teacher trainings in that area, community engagement in that area as well. And looking forward, I am excited about the construction of the elementary school, the community engagement in that, and giving them transparency in how that money is being spent. And right now is excuse me, budget season at the state legislature. So my focus for the next several months is going to be seeing what we can do to get the legislature to increase the reimbursement rate that they pay us for special education funding. Right now, we are mandated to provide education for all students, regardless of their need, and the state only, for that mandate, the state reimburses us only about 30% of the cost we incur. We think that the legislature can do better than that, and so we have a lot of advocacy efforts around that to increase that, which will have a big impact on our budget and our bottom line.
Touch on, yeah, we're going to touch a lot on really question 5, just about this idea of like diversity, both when it comes to race, but also socioeconomic status and like student ability. We have, you know, you might look at the report and say like, hey, our school's 99%, our high school's like 99% Caucasian, but we have a very wide variety of socioeconomic status ranges, and especially when it comes to students with disabilities. So how can we embrace these diversities and reduce these prejudices? Like, what policies we want to implement to see change in these regards?
I struggle with it from a policy framework. I think that we have the policies in place to do that. I think it is a matter of the thoughts I had on this. When we sit down, when we have our board meetings, each one of us has in front of us a sheet that reminds us of, it's a decision-making framework that reminds us to make sure that as we're making these decisions, we are thinking about all of those things. We're, making sure that decisions are accessible regardless of race, socioeconomic status, immigration status, whatever it is. And so I think that culture starts at the top, and we've definitely made, from all 7 of us, a commitment to that culture. And so as a board, we've given that direction to the administration, who has embraced that as well and run with it. There are teachers that work together in a committee to continue to build on that work as well. And I think it goes back to some of the things Adam was talking about earlier around having specifically focused on the student belonging as one of the 3 priorities that we picked out of the strategic plan. So that's something that I know our staff and our student services team continues to work on. And some of it's bringing in curriculum, some of it is additional teacher training at all grade levels. Some of it is community engagement events to make sure that our community is aware of everything that's going on as well and is supportive.
Yeah, building on that, I agree. It's like it's a lot of the giving visibility and trying to influence hearts and minds as much as trying to legislate it, because I do feel like we have some pretty good protections in place, and those are only as good as what people believe in behind it. You can dance around a lot of different rules and regulations. Being able to think and talk to people in a way that explains how we're trying to train you all to be able to go out into a world that doesn't necessarily look like Mount Horeb. There's a lot of different people, a lot of different backgrounds. As you mentioned, there's a lot of different types of diversity, even within a population that at face value looks the same to people. So it is about just sort of recognizing the strengths of those differences and understanding that people come from different places. I do think it's really important that we don't lose the fact, though, that we have to look out for kids who have been historically marginalized, whether that's people of color, LGBTQ. There's no getting around the fact that continues to be an issue. And it's probably one of the biggest sources of concern, fear among parents of those kids. How do they fit in? Where do they fit in? Just because it's that much easier to channel frustration, anger, whatnot, at people who are visibly different than you or act different to you, or that belong in different groups, so to speak. So I think that's our board has said time after time that we're not going to stand for anything less than full support of inclusivity in the high school and lower grades as well.
Yeah, we also talked, I think it was safety and wellness, maybe we talked about it. We have a board, I don't know what we technically call it, it's a board like diversity statement And we've talked about kind of relooking at that because we haven't looked at it in a while, updating it maybe if it needs to be updated, yeah, getting it out there again because it's on our website, but if you don't go to the website, you don't know it's there. And we've also, some of the things we've done in the community, like we held a potluck. I forget what it was called, but everybody brought like a dish from their ethnicity and then there was a huge potluck. Try to do stuff like that to bring in other cultures. And even like doing some of these field trips where people are going places so they can meet people, like they did I forget what the dancers were. They were twirling in the air. The Chinese or Japanese, I don't remember, but it was very cool.
Yeah.
And taking kids to see that stuff that they're not going to see here, right? So trying to open their minds that way. But I struggled right away with this question because like, how are we going to write a policy? We already have, like, we have a bullying policy. You know, we have our statement. We have a lot of policies in place. But I think you're right. It comes top down. So we need to start looking at our board statement again and maybe zhuzh it up a little bit and put it back out there. And because we're lucky. We're in where we're at. You have a board right now that isn't going to put up with any of it. Like we'll put our foot down. We're not gonna tolerate any of that here. Just not. So that really answers your question, but
I think the biggest thing that the students can ask for going forward, we have the policies, but how can what insurance do we have that they will be protected? Like kind of like our last question, right? We have a lot of these like policies that teachers do. We are allowed to fly a pride flag. We have these pronouns and email signatures. Other districts had these too, but some of them are repealed them, right? So how can we have insurance that these measures are going to be protected? Like,
I think it's
would they be
important
protected?
to remember at the same time that certain situations in which I know that one issue was when I believe it was maybe last June, the pride flag was being flown at the high school, and it did cause some issues, more so in that some people's religions, not that they look down upon those people or like, hate those people for choosing their actions, but say that, because of their religious beliefs, okay, I cannot support this, then they're being represented as supporting it, and then almost in the, almost feeling that as like the discrimination against them for their religious beliefs in that they aren't allowed to have them or have those opinions. I think that the issue can also arise in the way that certain policies can obviously not be related to religion, but be certain things such as pride flags that can bump up against students' religions that they have, and not necessarily the expression of those religions, but the expression of things that rather aren't exactly against their religion, but have support beliefs that are against their religion, and how that would also play a role in different policies in that can also be a way that people can experience that sort of prejudice of being shunned down, that their ideas or that their beliefs are forcibly seen as wrong. But then how policies would also address that side of the issue.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think when there was some of that discussion, the point that where I stand on that is that in that particular issue, to Adam's earlier point, LGBTQ people are one group that have been historically marginalized, historically and today. And if there are people who feel that that is against their own personal values, my argument would be that this is, to be a straight white person is the norm, right? That is the norm. And there is less of a call to celebrate the norm because it's celebrated every day by everybody. And if I'm struggling a little with choosing the right words there, to acknowledge that there are marginalized groups does not take away anything from those others, from anybody else, regardless of what it is that what marginalized group or what area you are elevating or highlighting at any particular time. In terms of insurance, that's a tough one, right? Because it depends on the people, in place. And so I would say that democracy and voting is the insurance. Again, you have a board right now that is very committed to that. Like the one line I wrote down in answer to this question, I read, there was an article in the New York Times a couple weeks ago about an administrative judge at the EEOC who was as federal guidance was starting to come down, she emailed her team with what she felt was the right thing to do, and she was reprimanded. And the quote that she gave to the paper was, "I can exist on cornflakes and community if it means that my soul is intact," and that resonated with me. And that's how I feel. That's my personal commitment and insurance that we will continue to support all of our students, every single one of them. And if that means that we know that open expressions of inclusivity help further that sense of belonging from all of our students. And so.
And you would say that those, I know this is kind of expanding on the question, but then would you say that those certain examples that can go against those certain other ones that you consider being the norm? I just wanted your take on the idea of certain things like, well, the norm often is, treating people one way, but honestly now is with kindness. I think people next to me would say, oh, it looks bad if I'm kind to this person, so I shouldn't do that because I'm too cool for that. And different things and how that can relate in showing that, well, we'll support visibly certain people, but these people, no. I'm just interested on how, it relates in the specific protection of some, while the others that, appear to be the normal on the outside, as we were saying, that much of Mount Horeb appears to be, the normal, and appears to be all of the same, and how that relates then to those within the community who would technically fit within the normal box, then say, well, but I'm still struggling with this. And I think it really ties into what you were saying about the anxious generation, and how I think more so I feel like my question is more coming down to view of policies, but even different actions on kind of all those people, including those who would be technically the norm, because usually they're written off as, well, they're receiving support already, so we can look the other way. But how we can kind of, your view on policies, that sort of thing, adapting to fit, adapting to make sure that they are existing there for the entirety of the student and staff body.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can state after what I've seen and how this district operates, that administrators, teachers, support staff, everyone straight on down is looking out for every kid all the time. And that there's not special treatment given to anyone based on different status or background or anything like that. So I guess I would say that I don't see there being an issue that way, and that I feel like there's a lot of different supports built in for anyone who's having any issues of any kind. And it should never be thought or assumed that life is easy for anyone, especially when you're coming through high school. Doesn't matter what your background is. It's not just about high school, it's about the world. So a lot of people with a lot of money who are experiencing tough times. So I think that the school district has shown itself to be committed to all kids all the time. And I'll also say, if you want to get into the religious aspect of it, we actually just had policy review on observing religious ceremonies or whatnot, kids are allowed to take time out of the school day to go in, or whatever religious, classes or anything else that they might have, their own commitment. So we honor people who have different faith backgrounds, who have no faith background. This is an environment where everyone's in it together, everyone is different, but at the end of the day, I come back to feeling really good about how this district respects everyone and wants everyone to succeed.
It really is amazing how fast time flies here tonight. That was a really great question to end the evening, and certainly also the responses you provided. I think you all have a statement or two at the end in the script.
Yeah, so just thank you for taking your time to just give feedback to us. And just, a lot of these questions I come up with, I just asking a couple people, like, what do you want out of the school board? So I just really appreciate you coming here tonight and just being able to answer this and being frank with us throughout all these questions. So thank you so much.
One thing we did still tell student council, and I didn't think to say it, is we all have email addresses.
Yeah.
And they're school district email addresses, so you can email us from your school district email. So if people have, and they're all on the district website, you can just type our names and they should come up in the directory, but you are more than welcome to email us if you have questions, or if you think of something later and you're like, man, I wish I would have asked them, you can shoot us an email. One thing we will tell you is whatever, I'm not shy, I'll tell you. If you ask me a question, I'll tell, unless I can't legally tell you an answer, I'm gonna tell you an answer. So, I think we're all kind of that way.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much
Yes.
for the
Yes,
time that you
for putting this
spent
together.
putting this together and spending the Thursday before spring break the evening with us. I know it's a very busy time for you, and I appreciate your interest.